Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another sew along. So today's sew along, as you can tell by the title, is for the Cashmerette Turner dress, and I am very excited about this dress. I absolutely love the way it turned out, but we'll get into the full look and all of that momentarily. As I said in the title of this video, yes, this is absolutely the easiest knit dress pattern that you can make. And the bonus part is the bodice is fully lined. Yes, it is really good, really easy, really quick to get through. So much so that this sew along is all in one video today. So you're going to get the full tutorial in this video. So make sure you check the pinned comment down below. As I do in my other sew along videos, I will pin all of the prevalent information down below so you can skip around. Maybe you want to just skip to a certain part or move past a different section, whatever the case may be. The pinned comment down below will be timestamps, so you will be able to do that. So let's start with the history on this pattern. I have made this dress before. It was back in 2018. I'll pop up a picture here. It was a red dress. It was made out of a stretch crepe. I had made this before. I did make some adjustments. I'll talk about that very shortly. The only adjustment I didn't make at the time that I knew the next time I would make it would be to lower the bodice a little bit, because I thought the waistline came too far up under my bust. It was a little shorter than I wanted, and so did all of that in this video, and I will share that with you as well. And so let me get into some of the particulars about this pattern. I'm sure many of you who follow my channel already know how much I love cashmere patterns, and know I have sewn quite a few. As a matter of fact, if you want to see all of the cashmere patterns I have sewn, from the coats to the jeans, I will leave the link to my cashmere playlist, and then you can go back and check that out anytime you feel like it. And you also know I have done 2 other sew alongs for cashmere patterns. I will also leave a link to that up above and down below if you want to check those out as well. But today we are going to focus on the Turner dress. One of the things that's exciting about cashmere patterns that Jenny has recently done is she is expanding her size range to be even more inclusive. And so the Turner dress, and so she's slowly rolling out her patterns where they'll eventually all include the extended sizing. And so the Turner dress is included currently as one of the extended sizes. So just so you know, Cashmerette Patterns sizes, her cups are from a C up to an H cup. Awesome. Really, she does a really good job in drafting her patterns. And then the sizing for the Turner starts at a size 12 and goes all the way up to size 32. And so what does that mean, going up to a size 32? So as I look at my notes, the size 32 goes all the way up to a bust of 62 inches GH. So if you're in a lower cup range, you can do a smaller cup, but I'm just going all the way up to the highest cup and the highest measurements. And then the waist goes up to a 52, and then the hip goes up to a 62. So that is absolutely awesome. And the other beautiful thing about this pattern is labeled as beginner. Why? Because it is so super easy and simple to pull together. This can easily be, and this is, now that I have added my last adjustment tweak, this will be my TNT go-to. Need to whip something up, maybe I'm in a slow sojo mode or something like that, go ahead and just whip this up together. So super easy. But let's go ahead and get into it. So when we're talking about the fabric requirements, so you have heard me mention in previous videos, if you are plus size and you are doing maybe sizing, I would say because and I'll get into my sizing based on the sizing that I use. I did grade, but I'll talk about that. I would say, if at all possible, make sure you get a fabric that is at least 58 to 60 inches in width. If you can find it, I would say 55 to 60 inches in width if you can find it, because for this particular pattern, the skirt piece, it's it is pretty wide because it's more of like an A-line skirt. You do need that extra fabric, and you don't want to worry about piecing fabric together. You can most certainly cut it in panels and figure all that out. But if you don't want to worry about figuring all of that out, just make sure you use fabric that's at least 55 to 60 inches wide for your fabric. And so, because you will need it. And so, and then if you can find it even wider than that, depending again on your sizing, take in consideration your sizing. And I will say the skirt piece needs that width, otherwise you're gonna have to cut that pattern piece in a panel to make sure that you can get it fitted all in on your for your pattern. So the recommended fabric for this is a knit fabric such as a rayon jersey, a cotton jersey, a ITY with at least 50% crosswise stretch. And the lining fabric is suggested that you use the same fabric that you use for your main fabric, and that is exactly what I did, or a similar or lighter weight knit. And so let me share with you, I do have scraps. I just have a few. I purchased 3 yards of the fabric that I'm showing you today, and it is a cotton jersey. And this is actually a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful cotton jersey that I picked up from Style Maker Fabrics. And I will leave a link to it down below if it's still in, but it is named West Palm Leaf Collage Jersey Knit. No, I'm sorry, I have a jersey knit. This is a jersey knit, not a cotton knit, but a jersey knit. And it is so beautiful, so soft. And so it is, yes. And so it has a good amount of stretch to it. I will put a video here. So when you are looking at the stretch chart, there is a stretch chart in the pattern. So if you go ahead and measure the amount of fabric, which it says 3 inches of knit fabric should stretch to at least here. Go ahead and place your fabric down and then stretch it to make sure it has enough of that stretch in it to be able to make your dress. And then you want to also make sure that when you do get your fabric, make sure you go ahead and wash it. Usually on the website, it'll tell you, you know, the temperature or whatnot. For me, I just went ahead and washed it in cold water and then a very low temperature just to, for drying, just to take out any shrinkage. So make sure whenever you do get your fabric, you do wash it and everything. Make sure it gets any shrink that might be in there completely out. You also want to make sure when you're sewing up, and I'll just grab my here for you so I can show you. So when you're sewing with jersey or a knit, you want to make sure that you are using either a jersey needle, a ballpoint needle, or stretch needle. So I have 2 different kinds that I use. Well, mainly I use a jersey needle, and so I use a jersey. It's an 80-12. Let me see if I can hold this up and show it to you. What the jersey needle packaging looks like, just in case you need to find you some. That is the kind that I typically use. I have also used a stretch needle, which is number 75, which is how that one looks, the packaging. So usually for all of my knits, I always, whether I'm doing ITY or a jersey knit like this, I would use a jersey needle. Now I do know, depending on the quality of your ITY, if you do use a ITY, you might want to switch to a Microtex jersey needle, which those do exist, because sometimes it can be a little snagging with some ITYs. It just all depends on the quality. So once you have your fabric, those are your tools. A couple notions. You do want to make sure that you have, if you have this in your stash already, some clear elastic. And this is the brand that I have. This is a SewALong clear elastic. This is 3/8 inch wide. And then if you don't have to have the elastic. It's used around the waistband, and you'll see that in the SewALong to stabilize that, because to take the weight of the skirt. And so you can use something like twill tape or something like that around there if you don't have the clear elastic. And then because depending on, again, this will depend on the type of fabric that you're using, and I'll talk about this in the end, because my jersey, and actually you'll be able to see if I just hold this up. If I just hold this up, you see how my jersey ever so slightly curls. Now, when I was sewing with it, it really didn't curl, but as you can tell, it does have a little bit of a potential to curl there. And so what I have used, you've heard me talk about this many times on my channel before. I have the SewKeys knit stay tape. I do show this in the video as well, but I use this. I use the 1 inch wide knit stay tape to stabilize my hems on my sleeve and on the skirt. And yes, the bottom of the skirt is a very long hem, but this jersey, it's not thick, but it's just thick enough where I didn't want to turn it under twice to finish my hem, because then it just seemed that seam would have been way too thick. So instead, and you'll see, I'll share that in the end, I just serged and turned it under, but I first stabilized that whole seam first with the stay tape, and then I serged around the edge and then just turned it under. But I'll show you that. You can use a jersey twin needle, I should say, to do your hem if you don't have a cover stitch. If you have a cover stitch machine, you can just cover stitch this. I don't have a cover stitch machine. I just used my regular brother machine, and I serged and then turned under with a long zigzag stitch is how I did mine. I don't care for using twin needles, but if you do have a twin needle and you like using it, use that, or use your cover stitch to finish off your hems. And so those are just a few points I wanted to make. So now let's get into sizing. So for my particular dress, the sizing, I'll pop up a size chart here. I measure at 50 inches at the bust, 45 at the waist, and 52 at the hip. And so for me, keeping that in mind, one of the things I did take in consideration, the last time I made this dress, I was pretty much at the same size I am now, which is good because that saved me from retracing all of these pattern pieces off. And so if you are interested in knowing how I trace my patterns for different patterns and different things of that nature, I did do a standalone video for that, which is linked in the description box. I'll also put it in the iCards up above so you can see the different methods that I use to trace off patterns. So I did not have to retrace my patterns for this particular dress. So the pieces that I use, and I will show this, is I graded from a 20. I started with the 20 at the shoulders because one of the things I do recognize with Cashmerette patterns is that I usually have to do some kind of shoulder adjustment. And so at the time when I first made this, I did these adjustments already, so this really did save me a lot of time. So I started with the 20 up at the shoulders, and then around the bust I graded out to a 22, and then when I got to the waist I graded out to a 26, which was super duper easy to do so far as tracing when I traced out the pattern. Now I will add a video clip here that shows so you can see my pattern pieces, because like I said, the other adjustments I'm about to go through I already made. The only new adjustment I did have to make was lengthening the bodice on the dress. But showing you in this clip here, I did do a sloping shoulder adjustment by 1/4 inch. I also did a gaping neckline adjustment of 1 inch. I did a sway back adjustment of 2 inches, and I also lengthened the bodice by 3/4 inches. And so those are the adjustments that I made for this particular pattern. The thing is, when I say this is easy, once you have figured out your adjustments, any adjustments that you need to make on a pattern, it really does become just super duper easy the next time you want to do it, unless you're on a weight loss journey or something like that. Or if you happen to gain weight, then you might have to make some adjustments to the pattern. And so those were the adjustments I needed to make on the pattern. And like I said, for this particular dress, the only other adjustment I made to my already traced off and adjusted pattern pieces was to lengthen my bodice by an additional 3/4 of an inch, which worked out perfect. And so for those particular adjustments, I have done videos on how you do those adjustments. I have a video on my gaping neckline adjustment, sway back adjustment, how to do that, and the sloping shoulder adjustment. Those videos I will link down below, and you will be able to, one of them is a sew along, and it will be a timestamp that says sway back adjustment. Just click there and then you'll see how I do a sway back adjustment. But all of those adjustments have I have already done videos for those, and I will reference those down in the description box, so you can most certainly go check those out. So the last thing I want to mention before we get into the sewing is when you're laying out your fabric, one of the things I would take into consideration, picture this as your fabric. This is selvage to selvage, and so you have this laid out. Typically you will fold your fabric in half and you would cut, because the bodice pieces you can cut them out on less fabric. Instead of folding this over and just cutting out your pattern pieces, save yourself some fabric and fold your selvages into the center. Hopefully that makes sense. So fold here your selvages, fold them into the center, and then lay your pattern pieces for the bodice on here. You'll be able to get both of them cut out, your lining and your main, by doing that, and that saves you a whole heck of a lot of fabric. And then once you get ready to cut out your skirts, go back to and just fold. You can go back and fold them the regular way, how you will cut out fabric. That is something I think I forgot to record in the sew along I wanted to show, but just a little tip I wanted to add so you can make sure that you save some fabric. For me, the fabric I have left over is this. It's enough probably for me to piece together some undies. So yeah, so keep that in mind. If you have extra fabric left over, you can probably use it for something else. So we are now going to go ahead and start sewing. You can pause here, go ahead, cut out all of your pattern pieces, make sure all of your adjustments are done and completed, and then we are going to get to sewing. Okay, so the first thing you want to do with your lining and your bodice pieces, because the pieces are cut out of the same fabric, if you use the same fabric, if you didn't use the same fabric and use a contrasting fabric for your lining, you won't need to necessarily worry about this point. But if you are using the same fabric, you want to make sure that one of your pieces is labeled with an L, just so you know which is your lining piece and which is your main outer shell piece. And so the first thing that we're going to do for both the front and the back lining pieces only, you want to go ahead and trim 1/8 of an inch off of this section here, as well as the back bodice piece. And our back bodice piece is just this neckline here. You're trimming 1/8 inch from the neckline on both that bodice, the lining bodice pieces for the back and front pieces. And again, as you can see, I labeled mine here, but again, I'm just trimming 1/8 of an inch off here, and then we'll be sewing all of the bodice pieces and lining pieces together at the shoulder. I will show you that in a moment. So now that you have sewn your bodice pieces together, lay the shell bodice on top of the lining bodice with right sides together. and then begin sewing all the way around, pivoting at the point, coming all the way back up, and stopping where you started. Okay, and so what you want to do is clip into that V that you sewn for the front. Clip up to, but not through the stitching. Okay, now it's time for a little bit of understitching. I know this is a little hard to tell, but this is the front. There's my V, as you can see there. And this is the inside. I've turned everything right side out. So turn everything right side out. And then what you're going to do is spread the shell and the lining apart, because what you're going to do is understitch the lining side. You're going to understitch the lining side to that seam allowance at 1/8 of an inch. So I know that's a little confusing, so I'll try to show you as best I can on my machine, but I want to show you how it looked once you turned everything out. And so I will now fold this up so you can see. This here is my lining right here. And so when we understitch, we're going to understitch that seam allowance we just sewn to our lining piece, but I will show you that. Okay, so go ahead and separate your back bodice and your front pieces. So you still have the opening here on the sides. So go ahead and flip this up. And what you'll see is the lining piece. Remember, if you marked your fabric pieces, if you have not, I highly suggest that you do. If you haven't already, what you're doing for the understitching is you are understitching the neckline, the entire neckline that we had just sewn. So what you're doing is sewing the lining to the seam allowance. So this is the lining piece. Here's your seam allowance. And so with the understitching, you're just going to understitch this all the way around at 1/8 of an inch. So go ahead and just take your time and understitch all the way around. Again, this is your lining. And let me just mark this. So when you're stitching 1/8 of an inch, you're just stitching the pretend that's stitch lines, because it's going to be a little hard to show through the viewfinder as I'm actually sewing. But I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. But you're just stitching, understitching that, the seam allowance to the lining piece. So here's where you will see the stitching. So if you have it facing up towards you, the right side of the fabric, and so I just flipped everything over and I'm going to stitch 1/8 inch. So this is my lining piece here on this side, and here's the seam allowance that I just showed you underneath, and I'm just going to do 1/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay, so that is done. Go ahead and give everything a really good press around the neckline, and it's suggested to roll your lining in just slightly. So as you can tell, if you can tell at that upper edge of the back bodice piece, it is rolled in ever so slightly, and then give it a good press. So now what you want to do is go ahead and baste the shell to the lining at both the armholes, wrong sides together. And I will show you that once it's all pinned and ready to go. So your bodice is laying wrong sides together, and you're going to pin one sleeve all the way around very carefully. So this is the arm side. I've already finished one side over here, but then again you're going to go ahead and pin all the way around. Once everything has been pinned all the way around and you have stitched that together, attach the sleeve. As you can see here, the sleeve it goes in flat. So go ahead and lay it in flat, pin all the way around, and then we will begin stitching this together. Okay, so what you see here is the serge seam of the sleeve that we just put in, and it is pressed towards the sleeve. And just so you all know, Cashmerette, if you have her Upton expansion pack, there is a way to hide this seam if you didn't want to have a raw edge. Her expansion pack has a way that she has combined hidden essentially this seam. So if you do have that expansion pack, I will highly suggest, actually, and it's for the cap sleeve version, definitely look at those instructions. But anyway, once that is all done, go ahead and pin your bodice right sides together. And you can tell this is right sides together because here's my sleeve, which is the wrong side. Again, I know it's a little tricky if you're using the same fabric for both the lining and the bodice, but go ahead and pin all the way from the underarm all the way down to the waist seam, and then you're going to sew starting at the waist seam all the way up, pivot towards the armhole here, and then finish off this end, and then you'll be able to go ahead and finish that seam. Serge edge, if you don't have a serger, that is okay. You can just do a stretch stitch on the edge here as well. Okay, so you have sewn now your sleeve and your all the way down from the sleeve down to the waistline, and then you pressed this seam towards the back. And then if you have a serger, go ahead and serge your ends. Then what you're going to do is base the lining to the main bodice piece. So I've just pinned it here so you can see, but what you're doing is basting these two pieces together at 1/4 of an inch all the way around the entire bottom of the bodice. Is to hold the lining and the main bodice fabric pieces, making it all as one piece, because the next step we'll be doing is sewing and attaching the skirt. Okay, now I want you to pin your skirt pieces together at side seams, right sides together. Sew and press seam allowances toward the back. And then we are getting close to the Okay, now that you have your skirt pieces sewn, as you can see here, I have mine sewn, and then you press your seam towards the back. Now remember, your front and back skirt pieces are the same, so you might want to just label one of the pieces so you know which is the back. So my seams are now pressed towards the back. What you want to do is grab your bodice piece. Make sure your bodice piece is turned inside. I'm sorry, your skirt is turned inside out and your bodice pieces inside the skirt, and you want right sides together. Then if you have available, let me just show you this. This was in my stash, but it does call for clear elastic. If I didn't mention that already, we will be attaching this, and what it's doing is helping to stabilize the waist seam because the skirt can feel way heavy on that seam. So this clear elastic is to help with that. If you don't have clear elastic, you can use some kind of other stabilizer. You can use twill tape or something to that sort of ribbon around this area, just to make sure that it is stabilized for the weight of the skirt. Okay, so my bodice is inside the skirt. Right sides are together, and I have pinned all the way around. So let me just show you. You want to make sure that all of your notches, so you have your notches in your bodice and in your skirt, make sure those notches are lining up. What you want to do is first line up your side seams and do some nesting. So nesting is lay one seam this way and then the other seam that way. That will, at least for the most part, ensure that your seams line up on the outside. Sometimes it's not perfect, but that will be able to help you if you nest those seams. But as you can see, everything is pinned carefully. Lots of pins. Don't stick yourself all the way around. And now you want to stretch a length of clear elastic several times, and then cut a piece the length of your waistband. And then again, this will be used to stabilize the seam and support the weight of the skirt. And then pin to the waistband on the skirt side. So on the skirt, this is the skirt side, this is the bodice side, on the skirt side, and then sew around through the bodice, through the skirt, as well as the elastic. So I am going to attach my elastic around, and then I'll show you what that looks like once it's attached, and then I'll sew everything together. Okay, for ease, I went ahead and just used, so you can see, because you can barely see that clear elastic there. I went ahead and attached it using Wonder Clips, just so you can see for SewALong purposes, this is attached. And so what you're going to do is, and I'll do this off camera, actually, this part, but all you're doing is sewing through the elastic, the waistband, and the bodice piece. So you are sewing through all of the layers all the way around, and then you can go ahead and finish off your seam with the serger or a zigzag stitch on the edge here. And then you're going to press the seam allowance down towards the skirt. Okay, so our bodice and our skirt are attached. I have finished my edge. Now here is my elastic here. I know you can barely see it. So what I've done when I finish my edge, if you are using your serger, don't cut off anything. At least that's my recommendation. Just close off that edge so it has a nice clean edge finish, and then you're pressing that seam down towards the bodice. So here is your dress all done. The last thing we need to do is finish off our hems on our sleeve and on the bottom of our skirt. The first thing I want you to do is go ahead and try your dress on. Make sure the length is where you want it. It calls for a 1-inch seam hem. You may want it to be a little deeper of a hem. You might find you want to cut some off, but go ahead and try it on, see if you like the length, and then go ahead and hem your skirt and hem the sleeves as well. Okay, so for my hem, one of the things I am going to do, this is some stay tape, some knit stay tape. Is 1 inch wide, it's a 25-inch roll or 25-yard roll, and it is the SewKeys stay tape, and I will leave a link to it below. This here I find is very useful for knits such as this. So my knit does roll ever so slightly, and so what I'm going to do is stabilize the sleeve hem as well as the skirt hem. I am going to apply this around the hem of both the sleeve and the skirt. You iron this on. There is a side you can tell which side you will iron on, and then I am just going to, instead of folding under twice, because depending on the type of knit that you're using, you might just want to fold it under twice and have a nice clean finish that way. Otherwise, what I am going to do, because this is just, it's not overly thick, but it's thick enough where I don't think I want it rolled under twice. Instead, I'm going to serge the very edge of it and then fold it under, and then do a slight zigzag stitch all the way around. So I will show you what that looks like when it's all done. Okay, so how was it? How did you like it? What did you think? Was it not the easiest and the fastest knit dress pattern that is the bodice is lined that you have ever sewn? So super easy, so super easy. And so you all saw the video how the dress looks on me. I absolutely love it. I love the adjustment I made, and I'll just show you here. Originally that waistline was like right up under here on my other dress, but it sits absolutely perfect now. This fabric that I use, absolutely love it. I could definitely see using a cotton jersey or another jersey knit like this, a cotton knit or another jersey knit like this, because it just feels beautifully. It's nice and swishy. Let me show you what I was saying about the hem. So if you can see here, I just turned mine under. I did a long zigzag stitch. I turned it under, so the bottom of my hem on both my sleeve and on the dress is very stable. I don't have to worry about that curling look that can happen when, like I had described earlier, like the edges curl just ever so slightly. So I can only imagine if I did not stabilize around the hem first, that might have looked a little curly after I had finished off the hem. So I did not want that, and I did the exact same thing with the hem around the sleeve. As you can tell, the adjustments, I'm sure you could tell in the video too, but the gaping, when I first did this, there was gaping and all of that. All of that has been corrected, and as you can tell, my sway back, no sway back, no bunching of fabric back there. Just love it. Shoulder area fits beautifully, but again, you'll see that in the video, and I'll add in some extra pictures. So what else can I say? It is an easy sew. If you like comfort dresses like this, especially if you're just going out and about, maybe for work, whenever we go back into the office, and just maybe a church, depending on the type of fabric that you use. This is such an easy sew. So far as accessorizing for me, this particular look, as you can tell, the bracelet, the earrings, and the necklace that I use, you all know I like statement pieces, and so different costume jewelry. So very simple is what I added. Well, I call it simple, but maybe not so simple jewelry I added with this look today. So I absolutely love it. I hope you enjoyed this sew along. Be sure, if you do, that you share this video. Feel free to share this video. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. Please give it a thumbs up on your way out. If you like the sew along, I would greatly appreciate it. Share with other sewists that you think will enjoy this video. And yeah, make sure you tag me on Instagram and or Facebook and let me know. Tag me and say, here is my Turner. So I would love to see how your dress turned out. If you have any questions or if you think I missed anything today, be sure to leave them down in the comment section. Let me know what you think of today's video. Let me know what you think of the final look. I greatly appreciate everybody for tuning in today. You all have a fantastic Sunday and have a blessed rest of your week. Bye.